Well, hello, my dear friends. I hope you're doing great today. Today is Sunday, and I hope everyone is doing fabulously today. I wanted to discuss this notion of pandering to an audience, and perhaps more specifically in this particular instance, given our particular interests, the idea of pandering to a type audience, namely, to be even more granular, an INFJ audience. What are the signs that you might be pandered to without being aware of it? Why is it, in certain circumstances, a bad thing that you should be aware of? And what are the ways in which, conversely, you can detect someone who's actually genuinely trying to share insights to be of support? Okay, so if you're interested, stick around. It's the hour of the wolf. So when I'm in wolf mode, usually I spit truths. So, I suggest you stick around. This is my credibility, should I say, as an INFJ author, is that I have written a book on the INFJ type. Look, it's the Ecstatic Soul, and this is not about pandering, despite the use of the word ecstatic. So check the links below if you haven't got it yet. And there's also my book, The Infinite Castle. What is this castle and why is it infinite? And I'm going to, by way of a little teaser, because, I have a book on the INFJ coming out soon, and these two books offer a clue as to the content and the title of the next book. There's a few among you who are already aware of it because you follow my Patreon page, which, by the way, you can also support down there. It really, really helps me. It's from a very cheap amount every month. But yeah, this is a novel and it explores lots of interesting existential themes in fiction, but also the main characters in INFJ. So if you're interested, you can get a copy. All the links are provided below. So, pandering. When you are a content producer, and after a while you come quite naturally, although you can make that happen faster, to more familiarity with your audience. You become more familiar with the audience. You can have some qualitative data to inform it. You can have some quantitative data to inform it. You can also have good old intuition and feeling in your bones. That ought never to be underestimated. You get a sense of your audience. You get a sense that your audience makes you stronger. You want to attract more of that audience. And one of the risks that you fall into, or that you are exposed to, that you might fall into, of course not everybody falls into it, is the notion that you are telling your audience what they want to hear. You're coddling your audience, you're comforting your audience. You might be willing to tell soothing lies to your audience. In other words, you're pandering. And I think it's obvious that not every scenario involving pandering is going to be as noxious as the next. But when it comes to a topic like, addressing people of a certain type, when you yourself identify as a person of that type, and when you yourself are perceived as a person of that type who has credibility as someone who's managing to make ends meet, who's managing to do relatively okay in life, you're going to have a double credibility. You're not just someone who has an audience, someone who identifies as a person of a certain type, who is authentically seen as being of that type, but you also are seen as someone who's relatively stable in their life, whose life is not chaos, whose life is not a mess. And therefore, not only will people be tempted to take your advice seriously because they think you're legitimately that type, and they think that they are this type too, but they will also tend to want to, or be tempted to emulate you or what they perceive you to be doing, if they have this image of you as someone who has, is even keeled, someone who, like I was saying, someone whose life is stable, whose life has a stability and maybe in some cases I would only include myself in those cases whose life is successful or perceived to be successful, because of course success is always a relative term, but we've all been there. We've all consumed content by people that we perceive in this way and whose authenticity we resonate with due to this and other properties and qualities that we see them as possessing. So there's like this responsibility that accrues to the content creator from the mere fact that they may well have an influence. And that's where I think that the idea of INFJ pandering becomes significant. It becomes significant because there's a few things that most people are probably aware of when it comes to INFJs. INFJs are, when I use INFJs, I usually mean it as people who think of themselves as INFJs. Okay, this may include people who will eventually figure out that they are not INFJs, but nevertheless the fact that they felt a strong connection with the INFJ descriptions means that there is a relationship there. Okay, so INFJs, insofar as they're people who think of themselves as INFJs, first of all, very much a rare type. It's not that interesting, I don't think, to try to debate whether it's the rarest type or second rarest or third rarest. I have made videos to that effect. Discussions are sterile in that department. But nevertheless, the fact of the matter is that it's a pretty unusual type compared to other types. So bound to experience a certain sense of typological loneliness in their universe. Not likely to easily encounter people who have that type, whether those other people are aware of it or not. So people who have that vulnerability, that desire to connect more than the average person of the average type or more common types, if you like. There is this desire to resonate, and INFJs, as I have tried to insist and detail and explicate in videos previously, are also people who are typologically made, constituted so as to experience a good deal of struggle in the modern and postmodern world, regardless of whether you'd rather call our world modern or postmodern. A rapid-fire digital narcissism, is a phrase that I use in my new book. You'll see that rapid-fire digital narcissism is and the cult of being special, the cult of being striking, the cult of standing out, finding ways to stand out quickly, and everything being really fast-paced in the moment. It really tends to prioritize extroverted perception, whether it's NE or SE. Not just those two functions, but if we're talking about perception, extroverted perception is the game in town. And it's not true that it was always the case. When you read the Bible, when you read the scriptures, when you read texts around that time, you get the sense that introverted perception was much more the game in town than it is now. Now it's not the game in town. Okay. And for reasons that I detail in the Ecstatic Soul, it's easier to become the game in town when you have TE, namely when you're an INTJ, than when you have FE. But if you want to know more, get this book. So INFJs are going to experience a certain sense of struggle. They're going to experience a certain sense of being torn apart by the various demands of society and the demands that exist within themselves, because, as you know, INFJs on the one hand, they have a fierce independence and autonomy linked to their NI intuition. On the other hand, they have a desire to be validated by the group due to their FE auxiliary, and even if it's not super conscious, it's always there. So there's a conflict there as well. There's a conflict with regard to the needs and demands of society imposes on us. And there's the fact that they're a rare type. So there is a vulnerability that comes with that, which makes, I think, probably an INFJ content creator who's really good at creating nice visuals and editing their videos well, doing the things that I don't do in some sense. There's a good opportunity there for them to crew an INFJ audience, and that's why they exist. That's why there's a lot of channels that have a focus on INFJs and INFJ audiences, and that's really good. There's a responsibility not to pander, though. There's a responsibility not to pander, because essentially pandering to INFJs is telling INFJs the usual things. Don't worry about these struggles that you're experiencing, because deep down you're really special. You have this whole world inside your head that you can access whenever you get in a more meditative mode or contemplative mode, or maybe you don't need to do any of those things. You can interact with people, but deep down you know that you're like this, and that's supposed to be fine, you know? Or telling you that you're going to be okay in that situation without really giving you the tools, the realistic tools to deal with a situation that is in fact a world situation where people are not going to be of your type, and it's not always going to be easy, whether it's in relationships, whether it's in a particular event, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's dealing with administration. You know, all the possible life experiences that you go through as an INFJ are potentially challenging. And I think that the speaker who has an audience needs to be very acutely aware of the fact that sometimes, I don't want to say tough words, because it's not about whether you use tough words or not. You know, I'm very much a supporter of the idea of a soft delivery, soft, compassionate, caring delivery of sometimes hard truths, right? What matters is not so much, you know, being harsh. You don't want to be harsh, you know, and INFJ content creators usually aren't. But you want to be honest. You want to honestly speak your mind. Of course, you can always add a further qualification, which is, you know, this is my experience as an INFJ. Maybe not all INFJ experiences are going to be like this, but nevertheless, this has been my experience. And, you know, usually when I say that, I do mean that this has been my experience numerous times in numerous contexts, variegated context, and that I have known INFJs personally and closely who experience the same things in different contexts, in variegated contexts. This is the extent of my credibility. I put it there before you, then you do what you want with it. And on the basis of that, then we start exploring difficult things, you know, alienation, distance, severance, you know, haziness of reality for INFJs. The fact that INFJs are often lethargic, existentially lethargic. They feel tired. This world tires us. But nevertheless, the world is not going to change just like that. You can't just say, well, you can create this other world that is next to the existing world, and this is going to be your retreat, and you're going to be happy there. Like, it's important to emphasize. It's important to think together, because also this is another important aspect, I think, of the drive to resist pandering, is to always think of co-constructing, co-building your particular investigations. I do that. The Patreon channel helps. The comments in the YouTube videos help. Some email exchanges help as well, although I don't always have time to answer in detail. But in a sense, we're in this together. We're investigating together. I'm providing. Maybe I'm in a comfortable position. I'm in an advantageous position to offer more easily recognizable or spread out intuitions and hypotheses about how we can inhabit this world we're in, that we have to accept is this world right now. Maybe it will change, and maybe we can contribute to this change. I discuss this, of course, in my new book, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. And until then, you know, we have to make ends meet, and we have to live rich, fulfilling, purposeful lives, meaningful lives. And this is another of my motto, and it's very, very kind of prevalent in the new book. What does it mean to have a purposeful, meaningful, rich, and fulfilling life as an INFJ? No? Certainly not watching videos that tell you that you possess all these great properties, and that even if people don't recognize it or it's not actualized in reality, the fact that you have this potential is sufficient for you to be happy, because it's not the case. You know, it's not the case, and it's rather superficial and empty pandering that happens when, you know, that is taking place when we experience this. So as you can see in this video, I'm not targeting any particular person, any particular content producer. I'm not doing this because I'm afraid of targeting anyone. I'm doing this because that's not the point. The point is really to discuss this principle, you know, because even you guys, some of you maybe you've already started YouTube channels or or, you know, producing content on other platforms. Maybe some of you are considering it, maybe some of you will soon. Just always try to keep this in mind. You will have a responsibility. You know, it's not about being hard, it's not about being a tough dad a la Jordan Peterson. It's about honestly speaking your mind about the challenges that face us, and that the liberation and the exhilaration that we're aiming towards will also be felt in relation to and to the extent that we're able to transcend our condition, which is admittedly not the easiest condition for a type 2 be in right now. Okay, so those were my thoughts on INFJ pandering, and I'm really curious to hear what you think. And if you feel like you've been pandered to before, if you think maybe that you've pandered, you know, you've been pandering yourself before, share your experiences, and let's continue the conversation. All right, see you guys soon. Bye-bye.